The little girl's faded shoes were polished until they shined, but they could never hide the holes along their edges. She stood quietly beside her mother, clutching a handmade birthday card while guests dressed in designer suits laughed beneath bright crystal chandeliers. Then a cruel voice sliced through the elegant afternoon like a knife. A wealthy fiancé pointed toward the child, mocked her worn clothes, and laughed loudly enough for the entire ballroom to hear. The room fell silent as the embarrassed maid lowered her eyes, trying to shield her daughter from the humiliation. Everyone expected the billionaire host to ignore the scene. Instead, he slowly stood from his chair, looked directly at his fiancée, and made a decision that would change every life inside the mansion forever. Before this unforgettable story begins, if you believe kindness is more valuable than wealth and everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone you love, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps these emotional stories reach hearts around the world. The warm Saturday morning sunshine poured across the enormous estate owned by Alaric Vaughan, one of the country's youngest self-made billionaires. Newspapers admired his success, magazines praised his business empire, and television interviews celebrated his remarkable achievements. Few people knew the quiet truth behind his success. Alaric had grown up in a tiny apartment where every dollar mattered. His widowed mother worked long hours cleaning offices while he studied beneath flickering kitchen lights. She taught him one lesson that stayed with him forever. Never judge a person by what they wear. Judge them by how they treat others. Years later, after building one of the nation's largest technology companies, Alaric never forgot those words. Among the staff working inside his mansion was Nerissa Hale, a gentle housekeeper who had served the Vaughan family for nearly 9 years. Every morning before sunrise she quietly prepared breakfast, polished furniture, watered gardens, and somehow still found enough energy to raise her 8-year-old daughter, Poppy, alone. Poppy dreamed of becoming an artist. She filled old notebooks with colorful drawings of flowers, birds, smiling families, and peaceful neighborhoods where nobody felt ashamed of being poor. Although Nerissa struggled financially, she always made sure her daughter arrived at school with clean clothes, neatly braided hair, and endless encouragement. That afternoon the mansion hosted a grand charity celebration honoring Alaric's latest business success. Hundreds of guests arrived wearing expensive suits and sparkling jewelry. Among them was Alaric's fiancée, Celestine Rowe. Beautiful, confident, and admired by high society, Celestine cared deeply about appearances. Too deeply. She believed wealthy people naturally deserved greater respect. She measured success through luxury. Compassion rarely entered the equation. Before the celebration began, Nerissa quietly asked permission to bring Poppy for a few hours because school had closed early for teacher training. Alaric immediately agreed. He even instructed the kitchen staff to prepare the little girl's favorite strawberry cupcakes. When Poppy arrived wearing her carefully washed blue dress and worn shoes, several employees smiled warmly. The child greeted everyone politely. She thanked every server who handed her juice. She admired the flowers decorating the ballroom. She quietly sketched the grand staircase inside her notebook while waiting for her mother to finish work. Then everything changed. As Celestine entered the ballroom surrounded by fashionable friends, her eyes landed on Poppy. She paused. Looked slowly at the little girl's clothes. Then laughed. The laughter quickly became cruel remarks about cheap fabric, old shoes, and children who supposedly didn't belong inside elegant homes. The room became painfully quiet. Poppy lowered her notebook. She didn't fully understand why strangers were laughing. She only knew everyone was staring at her. Nerissa rushed toward her daughter, gently placing an arm around her shoulders. Years of hardship had taught Nerissa how to endure humiliation without responding. She whispered comforting words while quietly leading Poppy toward the hallway. Before they reached the door, a calm voice interrupted. Alaric had witnessed everything. He slowly crossed the ballroom without anger or shouting. His expression remained composed. That silence somehow carried greater authority than rage ever could. He looked first at Poppy. Then at Nerissa. Finally at Celestine. Without embarrassing anyone publicly, he thanked Poppy for attending his celebration. He admired the drawing she still held in trembling hands. It showed nothing more than children playing beneath colorful trees. Simple. Beautiful. Hopeful. Alaric asked permission to keep the picture. Poppy nodded shyly. He placed it beside the expensive crystal centerpiece at the head table. Then he quietly announced that, in his opinion, it had become the most valuable decoration in the entire ballroom. Guests exchanged surprised glances. Celestine forced an uncomfortable smile. The celebration continued. But something inside Alaric had changed. Late that afternoon he walked through the mansion's gardens alone. He couldn't stop remembering his own childhood. He remembered classmates mocking patched clothing. He remembered pretending not to be hungry. Most of all, he remembered his mother's tears after believing she had failed him simply because they were poor. He promised himself that no child standing inside his home would ever feel that same pain. The following Monday morning, Alaric made an unexpected visit to Poppy's elementary school. Without informing reporters or photographers, he quietly observed an art class from the back of the room. He watched Poppy help another student clean spilled paint. He noticed she shared her pencils with classmates who forgot supplies. When another child accidentally ruined her painting, she simply smiled and started over without complaining. Talent impressed Alaric. Character impressed him even more. That afternoon he learned another heartbreaking truth. Despite extraordinary artistic ability, Poppy had recently been offered admission into an advanced regional arts academy. Nerissa had declined. The tuition, transportation, and supplies cost far more than she earned. The little girl never complained. She simply folded the acceptance letter and placed it inside her notebook. Dreams, she believed, sometimes belonged only to wealthy children. Alaric quietly left the school carrying a heavy heart. Meanwhile, Celestine noticed him becoming distant. Business dinners no longer interested him. Luxury shopping trips felt meaningless. Instead, he spent more time visiting schools, community centers, and children's charities. She couldn't understand why. One bright Thursday afternoon, Alaric invited Nerissa and Poppy to the mansion library. There, resting on the large wooden desk, lay a sealed envelope bearing Poppy's name. Neither mother nor daughter knew what waited inside. Neither imagined that opening one envelope would transform their future forever. The library was filled with warm daytime sunlight pouring through the tall windows as tiny particles of dust floated peacefully in the air. Poppy stood nervously beside her mother, staring at the elegant cream-colored envelope resting on the polished wooden desk. She had never received a letter with her own name written in beautiful gold handwriting. Her small hands trembled as she carefully opened it. Inside was not just one letter. There was an official acceptance package from the prestigious Regional Academy of Fine Arts, a complete 4-year scholarship covering every expense, transportation, books, art supplies, and even a personal mentor chosen from some of the country's finest artists. For several long seconds, neither Poppy nor Nerissa spoke. They simply looked at one another in disbelief. Nerissa's eyes slowly filled with tears. She immediately assumed there had been some mistake. Families like theirs didn't receive miracles. They learned to expect disappointment. Alaric smiled gently and explained that there had been no mistake at all. He had visited Poppy's school, spoken with her teachers, and personally viewed her artwork. Every instructor had described her as one of the most gifted and kind-hearted children they had ever taught. The scholarship had not been offered because she was the maid's daughter. It had been offered because she had earned it. Poppy clutched the envelope tightly against her chest. For the first time in many months, she believed her dreams were possible. Meanwhile, word of Alaric's decision quickly reached Celestine. She arrived at the mansion later that afternoon expecting to discuss wedding preparations. Instead, she found Alaric sitting quietly in the garden studying one of Poppy's colorful paintings. The picture showed a large tree with children from different backgrounds playing together beneath its branches. Nobody stood apart. Nobody wore expensive clothing. Everyone smiled exactly the same. Celestine couldn't understand why such an ordinary painting fascinated him. She questioned why he cared so deeply about a servant's child. Alaric calmly looked toward the flowers surrounding them. He remembered his own mother kneeling beside him decades earlier while sewing patches onto his school uniform late into the night. She had once whispered something he would never forget. Kindness is the only thing that never becomes old-fashioned. Looking back at Celestine, Alaric quietly realized their future no longer shared the same values. He explained that wealth without compassion eventually became emptiness. Success without humility became pride. A family built only upon appearances could never survive life's storms. Then, with complete calmness and respect, he ended their engagement. There was no public humiliation. No argument. No revenge. Only honesty. Although shocked, Celestine slowly understood that the decision had not been made because of one cruel comment. It had been shaped by a lifetime of choices that revealed what truly mattered to each of them. Weeks passed. Construction crews unexpectedly arrived beside Poppy's elementary school. Parents wondered what was happening. Teachers grew curious. Children excitedly watched trucks unload building materials every morning beneath bright blue skies. Months later the answer became clear. Standing beside the playground was a beautiful new arts center. Large windows filled every classroom with natural daylight. Shelves overflowed with paints, musical instruments, books, pottery wheels, and creative supplies. No tuition would ever be charged. Every child would be welcomed, regardless of income. Above the entrance stood a simple bronze plaque. It carried only one sentence. Talent belongs to everyone. Opportunity should too. The center quietly opened its doors. Children who had never held a paintbrush before discovered hidden talents. Parents volunteered after work. Retired artists offered free lessons. The building quickly became one of the happiest places in the community. Poppy spent nearly every afternoon there. Her confidence grew alongside her remarkable artistic ability. She continued wearing simple clothes. She continued treating everyone kindly. Success never changed her heart. Several years passed. One sunny afternoon the regional academy hosted its annual student exhibition. Hundreds of visitors admired paintings displayed throughout the enormous gallery. Near the center stood one breathtaking canvas that drew everyone's attention. The artwork portrayed a young girl wearing worn shoes while standing beneath brilliant sunlight. Beside her stood a smiling woman dressed in a maid's uniform. Behind them grew a magnificent tree filled with children from every background reaching toward colorful birds flying freely across the sky. The painting was titled, "Worth is Never Worn." When judges announced first place, the entire gallery erupted into applause. Poppy, now a talented young artist, walked quietly onto the stage. Instead of speaking about awards or recognition, she thanked one person. Her mother. She explained that beautiful clothes eventually wear out. Money comes and goes. But the love of a parent lasts forever. Many people wiped tears from their eyes. Standing quietly near the back of the audience, Alaric smiled proudly. He never stepped onto the stage. He never asked for recognition. Seeing Poppy achieve her dream was already more rewarding than any business success he had ever experienced. After the ceremony, Nerissa approached him. For years she had cleaned his home. Today she stood before him with overwhelming gratitude. She thanked him not for the scholarship. Not for the new arts center. But for seeing value in a little girl when others saw only old clothes. Alaric gently shook his head. He reminded her that he had simply opened a door. Poppy had walked through it herself. News of the remarkable art center spread throughout the country. Businesses began funding similar programs in other cities. Volunteers donated time. Artists offered free workshops. Thousands of children discovered opportunities that once seemed impossible. One act of compassion inspired countless others. Even Celestine quietly changed. Years after the broken engagement, she anonymously donated books, clothing, and art supplies to children's charities. She never sought attention. Perhaps she had finally understood the lesson she once refused to learn. Sometimes the greatest transformations begin with regret. Before we reach the ending, please leave a comment with the words, "Kindness is true wealth," if you believe every child deserves respect regardless of what they wear. We'd love to hear your thoughts. As the evening sun gently illuminated the new community art center, dozens of children laughed beneath colorful murals they had painted together. Some wore expensive shoes. Others wore worn sneakers. Nobody noticed the difference. Because kindness had become the dress code that mattered most. Alaric quietly watched from a nearby bench, remembering the frightened little girl standing silently in the ballroom years earlier. The child who had been mocked for her clothes had grown into a young woman inspiring thousands with her talent and compassion. Her greatest masterpiece wasn't hanging inside a gallery. It was the life she built without allowing cruelty to harden her heart. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes every child deserves kindness, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps us continue sharing emotional stories that remind the world compassion will always be more valuable than wealth. Sometimes people laugh at worn shoes without realizing they are standing before someone whose future will inspire the world. True greatness is never measured by designer clothes, expensive jewelry, or luxurious homes. It is measured by the kindness we show to those who have nothing to offer us except a sincere smile.